Hi, and welcome to another video. In this lecture, we're going to explore the reduce array method. So, what is array reduce? Array reduce starts with all the elements from an array. It iterates over them and then computes them to a single value. It's one of the hardest array methods to understand, so let's take it slow with a real-life example. Let's say that we have a grocery list with all the groceries we want to buy as well as their prices. That's going to look something like this. Const grocery list is going to be equal to an array, and then in there, let's do something like 29, 12, 45, 35, 87, and let's do 110. This is our grocery list prices. The thing that we want to know is the total price of all the items. This would be a perfect example for the reduce method. Here's a challenge for you. Pause the video and try to solve this using a for each loop. The solution would look something like this. We need to create a variable, we can name it total, and we're going to set total to be 0 at start. Then we take the grocery list and we call a for each method on it. In there, we get a singular item or the price for that item. And in the callback function, what we need to do is we have to increment the total. So total is going to be equal to total plus the price for each iteration, or simply said, total plus equal to price. This is going to increment the price to the total for each iteration. Finally, we can console log the total and see the output. There we go, the output is 318. As you can see, there is a need for an external variable called total that is going to keep track of the total price. It does work, but it's not the best way to do it. Now, let me show you the reduce method, which is going to remove the need for the external variable. We are going to do the same thing, so that's going to be grocery list, but this time we're going to call the reduce method. The reduce method takes in two arguments. The first one is a callback function, as we are already used to. And then the second one is the initial value of something known as an accumulator. In this case, we're going to set it to 0. The callback function of the reduce method also takes in two parameters. The first one is called an accumulator, and the second one is most often called the current value. Accumulator is something that we initialize, and then the callback function is executed many times. In each time, the current value will be set to the next element of the array. So, in our case, we have to add the current value to the accumulator each time that this method is called. To do that, we can return and then say accumulator plus current value. If we save this, now we can store the output of this into a new variable. So that's going to be the total. Const total is equal to, and then all of this. If you console log the total, if you save it, as you can see, we get 318 without using an external variable. We only have one, which is the total. Now, this is really complex. I think this is the most complex things we've written so far. So what exactly is happening here? Let's take a step back and let's do it on a simpler example. We're gonna leave this here for later. This time, we're going to create a numbers array. And just for simplicity purposes, it's gonna be 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. That's it. The goal is the same. We need the sum of these numbers. To do that, we said that we use the array reduce method. So we can use the reduce. Great. Now, as we just learned, reduce takes in two parameters. The first one is the callback function, and the second one is the initial value. In here, we can set that to 0. Inside of here, we also have two different things. We can name this one accumulator, ACC for short, and we can name this one val, short for value. You can name this anything you want, because as we learned, parameters in functions are just arbitrary names. Now let's expand this and see what is happening if we return the accumulator plus the value. First, we have that accumulator value, and it is going to be equal to 0, because that's what we said in here. Then we also have the current value, which is this val right there, and that is going to be equal to the first element in the first iteration through the loop of the numbers array. So that val is going to be equal to 1. Then what we do is we increment the values. So that's going to be 0 plus 1, and that's finally equal to 1. That 1 is the key thing here. 1 becomes the next accumulator value. So in the second iteration, the accumulator is going to be equal to 1 and value is going to be equal to 2. As you can see, that's because 2 is the second value in an array. With incrementing those, we get 1 plus 2, and that is now equal to 3, which means our accumulator is now equal to 3. I'm going to put this right there just so you know that the newly created value becomes the new accumulator. Moving forwards, now our accumulator is equal to 3, and our value is also equal to 3 because that's the third element in our array. Therefore, we do 3 plus 3, and that is going to be equal to 6. That 6 is our new accumulator. Moving forwards, our accumulator is now equal to 6, and then the value is equal to 4, as you can see right here. Therefore, 6 plus 4 are equal to 10, and 10 is our new accumulator. Moving forwards for our last iteration, our accumulator is now equal to 10, and our value is equal to 5. Therefore, 10 plus 5 is equal to 15, and that is our new accumulator, but in this case, that's also the final value or our total. So we can say that right here. Const sum is equal to, and that sum is going to be the last value that is returned from this function. Now finally, we can console log the sum. And now we know that it should be indeed 15. As you can see, the value is 15. This is how we would naturally sum these numbers up. 1 plus 2 is 3, plus 3 is 6, plus 4 is 10, plus 5 is 15. This is how the reduce method does it. 1 plus 2 is 3, and then 3 plus 3 is 6, 6 plus 4 is 10, and finally 10 plus 5 is 15. And then we get to the final value, which is 15. So whenever you have multiple values and you want to sum them up in a single value, you can use the array.reduce. One final thing we could do is, since this is an instant return, we can immediately put these values right there by removing the curly braces. Then it is all in one line. This is it. This is definitely the hardest array method out there, but it definitely is powerful. Whenever you have an array that you want to sum to a single value, you can definitely use array reduce. It doesn't only have to be numbers or strings. It can be objects or properties of objects. You can sum up anything that you need to put into a single value at the end. Whether it is an object or something else, you can use the array reduce. For the end, I would just like to say that you're not required to use the reduce method. You could also do the same things using, for example, a for each, filter, or something else depending on the purpose. But this is definitely going to be the most concise way to do anything that you have to sum down to one final value. And just so I don't forget, we can get back to our first initial example one more time, just so you can see if it makes sense for you right now. If we uncomment this, you can see we get the grocery list, and I hope this approach just makes a bit more sense right now. In our case, we have the grocery list. Let's simplify it just a bit. Let's say that we have items right there. In there, the accumulator is going to be our initial value or the total. So we could even rename it. Let's rename it total. And the current value would be one specific price of the item. In that case, we would do total, and then we would keep adding the price to the total. Now, this might have even complicated it even more, but I hope that this video didn't scare you a lot and that you're going to try using the reduce method at least a few times yourself. It is not all that scary once you get used to it.